Hello and welcome to pmblounge.com. Today we are talking about some more concepts from the WBS work breakdown structure topic, that is, these are deconstruction, 8 by 80 rule, control account, and code of accounts. Now, the thing with these topics, these concepts, is that you might have already heard about them, you might already know about them, but you might know their alternative name, not the name that they are used to, or not the name that you might see as an option in one of your questions in the PMP exam. So that is exactly the reason we are going over these concepts, so that you not just know the concept, but you also know their alternative names. So if that they show up as an option in one of the questions in PMP, you are able to mark the right answer. Let's get started with deconstruction. Now, deconstruction is basically another name of decomposition, right? And decomposition, the hierarchical decomposition of project work, is what a WBS does. So, if you see deconstruction as an option in your one of your questions in the PMP exam, understand that they are only talking about decomposition, the concept that you're already aware of. Deconstruction of project is done via the WBS creation. When you create WBS, you are deconstructing the project or decomposing the project. So here's an example of WBS, the one that we discussed earlier in one of the previous videos as well. By the way, I'll share the link to all the videos, the entire playlist of all the videos that we have discussed WBS on, as well as scope management, the playlist of scope management as well, on whatever that we have discussed in scope management. So as you can see in the example, you have deconstructed the project. The project is the product deliverable or the product of the project. This was the project and you have deconstructed it into several parts. That is what deconstruction is about, and that is what creating WBS is all about. Moving on, the next topic is 880 rule. The next concept is 880 rule. Again, you must be aware of this already. This is just another name of the 10-day rule. So you might have heard about the 10-day rule. What it typically means is that the WBS should follow the 880 rule, which basically means deliverables are decomposed till they require 8 to 80 hours of work. So you need to decompose the work packages, right, to a level wherein they require 8 to 80 hours of work. So in our example of the WBS, you can see we have decomposed the work. Let's say work package number 6. This work package, if it is something which requires more than 80 hours of work, we will decompose it further into activities. If activities require more than 8 to 80 hours of work, we will further decompose it to tasks, right? If there's a work package that requires less than 80 hours of work, that requires, let's say, 40 hours of work, that we will not decompose it further. But if it requires more than 80 hours of work, then we will decompose it further. So this is the 880 rule, which means 80 hours is typically 10 working days. So it is same as the 10-day rule. Moving on, control account is the next concept. It is not really a separate, different name for anything, but the fact is, control account is an important concept that you should know of. Now, what is control account? Let's get into it. Let's understand what control account is. If you could give me a second. Yep. So it could be difficult to track a project at a very high level in the WBS or at the lowest level. This is where we take a point between the topmost level and the work package level and call it the control account. Let me go, let me remind you about the WBS that we just witnessed, right? In the previous slide, we talked about WBS, right? You could see that if you track your project at the highest level, at the topmost level, you might not be able to present a status. You might not even be able to understand where you stand in the progress of the project. But if you track the project at the lowest level, which is where we were talking about tasks, if you track the level at tasks level, it can get very messy, and it can get extremely disorganized in terms of reporting the status to higher management. So how do we track the progress of the project? This is where control account comes into the picture, right? So control account, they are predefined determined points, right? So as a project team, you determine where you want to have these control account points. So these are the points where your scope, cost, and schedule are integrated. They are basically summed up, and they are compared to the earned value, right? So you compare it to the earned value. By the way, if you don't know what earned value is, we will cover that in detail in our future videos, but we have already covered the 16 most important formulas that you should know about before attempting the PMP exam. I'll link to that video in the description. It's quite a popular video on this channel, right? So so once you have that predetermined point, this is where you sum up all your numbers, basically your cost or your scope or schedule, and then you integrate all of them and you compare it with the earned value for performance measurement. That is where you measure performance of how you are doing, right? So a control account usually has one or more work packages. So it might just be one work package, or it might be more than one work package. But the point of the story, the point of this slide, a takeaway from this slide for you should be that control account is a level whereby it is a predetermined level. So you have decided what level would be control account for your project, and at that level you will measure your progress of the project, and you will compare it with the earned value to understand where how your project is performing, right? It can get messy if you track the project from tasks or activities level, or even with single work package level. What is work package, by the way, if you have forgotten that, the link in the description where we have talked about WBS in detail should help you. As a reminder, I'd like to let you know work package is a deliverable which is obtained after decomposing the WBS, right? So work packages are further divided into activity levels, like you have been seeing in the example that we are taking, right, of the WBS. Let's look into the WBS example to understand where a control account might fall in. So based on what we just discussed, right, if you are tracking your project at the task level, let's say you want to understand where the team is at task one, it can get very messy reporting, right, to the higher management. A large project, right, a huge project will have hundreds, if not thousands of tasks. And if you report to higher management in terms of tasks where you are with certain tasks, that can get uh, impossible to report basically. But if you report, let's say at the phase level, right? Let's say at phase 3 code level, right? And this is not a control account point. If you report your project from this level, right? And for some of the projects, it could actually be easier, right? You just mentioned code 66% complete and you're good to go. But for large projects, reporting the point, the percentage of code might not reflect the right picture, right? Let's say you have to code for four elements, right? Let's say you have to code for four different modules, and you report 50% completion. That is not accurate. It is quite possible that two of the modules have completed coding 100%, while the other two have not even started. So technically your coding is 50% done, but reporting the status, right, at that level might not be good enough to report to the higher management, right? And it might not even be good enough to track at your own level. And that is the reason why teams decide control points, right? So let's say a work package 6, right? This is a control point, uh, control account, not control point. So if this is a control account point defined, determined by the project team, agreed upon by project team, then what is going to happen is on your status, on your status report, right, you are going to add up the cost, the scope, the schedule required for everything below this control account point, and you will sum all of these up, and you will roll up to the control account point, which is work package 6, and then you will compare this with your earned value to understand where you stand in the project. Are you lagging behind or are you ahead? Right, so this is why control accounts are very special. This is why control account is an important concept, and this is why you should know about control accounts. Again, control account could also include more than one work package. Let's say a control account, if your project team decides that phase 1 initiation, this is going to be a control account because this is good enough measure to understand where you stand in the project, well, then this is going to be the control account, right? And this is where you are going to measure the uh, progress of your project from. And then finally, the last concept that you should be aware of is code of accounts. Now, this has nothing to do with control accounts as such, but code of accounts is very simple. It is typically a numbering system that uniquely identifies each component of the WBS. So all these different components of the WBS, how in the world, right? If you're doing a large project that has 250 components, right, of in the WBS, how are you going to, identify them? That is where code of accounts come into picture, right? Let's look into the example and understand what does code of account basically. So this is a WBS, and what code of accounts basically means is 1.1 is going to be the identifier for phase 1, and 1.2 is going to be the identifier for phase 2, which is design, right? Similarly, you can give 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, and this numbering system, right? It could be as simple as that, this one, 1.1, 1.2, and it could be something else. It depends on the project team, how they want to decide and how they want to come up with it. But it is as simple as this one, right? And at the next level, this could be, work package 1 could be called 2.1 because this is the second level. Similarly, activity could be called 3.1 as this is the third level. And then it tasks could be called 4.1 and 4.2 as these are the fourth level. I hope you're trying to understand the fact that for large projects, right, your WBS may go up to 15 levels, 20 levels, right, or even more for that matter. So this is why it is extremely important to have this kind of identifier, so that when you are writing an email, when you're discussing something and you say, I am talking about code of account 3.1, I'm talking about 3.1 here, that is where it gets very easy for other folks to refer to the WBS and understand what you are actually talking about. So that's pretty much it that we had in this video. Hope you liked it. Hit the like button if you did. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. Check us out on our social media, facebook.com/pmplounge and twitter.com/pmplounge. Send your queries at pmplounge@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit the website pmplounge.com, your number one free resource for PMP certification and project management industry information. Thank you.